The cry sliced through the savannah, unlike anything the man had heard before. It wasn't the usual playful trumpeting of a young elephant, nor the casual calls of the wild. This was something far more raw, a cry filled with distress and fear. His pulse quickened as the sound reverberated across the dry, cracked earth. He paused, his instincts immediately alert. The cry was urgent, reaching out through the vast emptiness, and the man knew he couldn't ignore it. He adjusted the straps of his gear, then began moving toward the sound, each step deliberate and slow. There was an undeniable weight to the moment. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he could already feel the gravity of it. As he pushed through the tall grasses, the usual hum of the savannah resumed. The soft rustling of leaves in the wind, the distant calls of birds, the faint murmur of insects at work. But above all, the baby's cries persisted, growing louder, more frantic with every step he took. The man's breath caught, his senses sharpened, aware that each moment could change everything. He couldn't yet see what was happening, but the cries were unmistakable. He continued forward, driven by a quiet urgency, his mind working through the possibilities. Was the baby lost, injured, alone? Whatever the cause, the distress was clear, and there was no room for hesitation. The man's pace quickened, his heart racing as he approached a thick cluster of trees. Then, there it was, the small, fragile form of a baby elephant, barely 2 years old, lying on the ground. The elephant's tiny body trembled with every breath, its legs shaky and weak beneath it, its eyes, wide with terror, locked on the man's as it let out another strained cry. The baby's ears flapped, its trunk swaying helplessly as it attempted to rise. But its legs were too unsteady, and with a soft thud, the calf collapsed back onto the earth, exhausted and defeated. The air around them held a heavy stillness, broken only by the baby's quiet sobs. The man halted several paces away, his eyes scanning the scene. The small elephant's body was covered in dust and dirt, its legs scraped and bruised from repeated attempts to stand. The man could see the pain in the calf's eyes, the confusion that came from being stranded, isolated. It was clear that the baby had been left alone, unable to move, struggling with the burden of survival. His heart sank as he observed the helplessness before him. There was no other elephant nearby, no sign of the herd. The loneliness of the moment was palpable, as though the baby had been forgotten, left to face its fear alone. The man's eyes softened with understanding, and he knew there was no time to waste. Slowly, carefully, he crouched down, his movements deliberate. He raised his hands in front of him, palms open, signaling that he meant no harm. His voice was soft as he spoke, not wanting to startle the young elephant, but needing to offer some form of reassurance. "It's okay, little one. We're here to help." The baby's body tensed at the sound of the human voice, but it didn't flee. Instead, it flinched slightly, its large, dark eyes filled with a mix of confusion and fear. It was clear the calf was unsure whether to trust the man, but there was also something in its eyes, a silent plea for help. The baby's cries had slowed to quiet sobs, and the man could see the exhaustion settling deeper into its small frame. Each labored breath seemed to weigh on the calf, its body unable to find the strength to rise again. The man knew that he couldn't rush the process, couldn't force anything. Patience was the only way forward. He moved even closer, inch by inch, allowing the baby to see him clearly, offering no sudden movements, only the steady presence of someone trying to help. The man could not be sure how long the baby had been stranded like this, but the exhaustion in its eyes told him that time was running out. He felt the weight of that responsibility, but there was no room for fear. The man had to be calm, composed, for both of them. The baby needed to feel the quiet assurance that it would not face this alone. The baby elephant's cries had stopped, leaving behind an unsettling stillness that seemed to hang in the air. The man, crouched beside the calf, remained motionless, his presence a quiet anchor in the fragile moment. His voice, soft and steady, offered gentle reassurances to the weakened creature. But he knew that time was running short. Every breath the baby took seemed labored, its frailty a stark reminder of the ordeal it had endured. The man could feel the weight of the situation, knowing that any decision made now would need to be measured with patience. Before he could gather his thoughts to act, the silence was broken by a deep, resonant rumble, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the ground beneath him, as though the very earth had stirred in response. The man froze, his senses heightened, his eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of the source. The rumble grew louder, a low and steady vibration that carried with it an unmistakable urgency. Then, through the distant trees, he saw her. The mother elephant emerged, her form enormous and commanding, yet moving with an unexpected grace. Her ears were raised high, alert and attuned to the sounds of her surroundings. Her trunk curled forward as though reaching for her calf from afar. Each step she took was deliberate, her body taut with the weight of concern. There was no hesitation in her movements. She was driven by an instinctive urgency, the protective bond between mother and child pulling her forward. The man stood still, watching with quiet reverence. He could feel the raw power in her presence, but it was tempered with a profound, silent tenderness. The baby elephant, still unsteady on its legs, flicked its ears nervously. Its body trembled slightly, trying once more to rise, but the effort was too much, and it collapsed back to the ground. The man observed, his heart heavy, but he knew that this moment was not one to force. The mother needed to come to her calf in her own time, to find her way to her baby, to reclaim her child in the natural course of things. He remained at a distance, allowing the moment to unfold. The mother continued her approach, each step reverberating through the earth beneath her. The ground seemed to tremble beneath her weight, yet her movements were graceful, an embodiment of both strength and care. The air around her thickened with the anticipation of the reunion. As she neared the calf, the baby's body seemed to recognize her presence, even before its mind could fully process what was happening. Slowly, almost instinctively, it turned its head towards her. The man could see the faint strain in the baby's body as it let out a soft, trumpeting call, a fragile, strained sound, but one that carried the yearning for its mother. The mother halted in her tracks, her trunk extended, reaching towards the air as she sniffed the ground, the baby's scent drawing her closer. Her body tensed, and for a moment it seemed as though the entire savannah held its breath. Then, slowly, deliberately, she took the final steps toward her calf. The man could see the subtle shift in the baby's posture as it began to relax, responding to the familiarity of its mother's presence. There was no rush, no frantic charge, just a quiet, tender exchange as the mother lowered her head to meet her baby. Her trunk gently touched the calf's side, a soft, comforting gesture that spoke volumes without a single sound. For what felt like an eternity, Neither of them moved. The man stood back, his breathing slow and steady, his eyes soft as he witnessed the tender connection unfolding before him. The baby elephant, still weak, seemed to find solace in the touch of its mother. There was a quiet relief in the air, a subtle shift as the space between them was bridged by the simple, powerful bond of mother and child. The savannah, which had seemed so vast and indifferent, now felt small, almost sacred, as if the very earth had witnessed this moment of reunion. The man remained silent, a respectful observer, knowing that his role had been fulfilled, that he had offered what was needed, and now the rest was between the mother and her calf. The mother elephant remained steadfast, never wavering in her devotion to the fragile life at her side. Her trunk moved with measured grace, brushing against the calf's small body, offering gentle encouragement. There was no urgency in her movements, only the quiet certainty of a mother guiding her young, instinctively knowing the steps that needed to be taken. The baby elephant, still weak and trembling from the trauma it had endured, tried again, its tiny legs quivering as it struggled to find strength. The effort was visible in every motion. The calf's small trunk swayed slightly, its body trembling with the exertion. Yet, in its struggle, there was also a growing determination. A deep, silent understanding seemed to pass between mother and child. A shared rhythm of breathing, each inhale and exhale an expression of trust and quiet resilience. The man, observing from a distance, felt his own body still in response to the profound moment unfolding before him. He remained where he was, offering no interference, no words. This was a moment between mother and calf, a bond that needed no interruption. The air was thick with silence, save for the soft sounds of the elephants moving. There was no frantic rush, no panic in the air, only the patient, steady movements of the mother, nudging her baby with the steady assurance only a mother could provide. Her touch was not forceful, but tender, each nudge designed to reassure, to remind the baby that it was safe, that it was not alone. The calf's legs shook beneath it, uncertain and wobbly, but the mother remained close, her massive form serving as both protector and guide. She stood nearby, her trunk moving slowly, purposefully, each gentle prod offering support and comfort. The baby tried again, its efforts still halting but persistent. The world around them held its breath as the calf, with the mother's guidance, slowly began to rise. The trembling body, once too weak to stand, found its balance in the quiet, steadfast care of its mother. There was no rush, no urgency. The moment unfolded at its own pace, slow but steady. And then, with one final effort, the calf found its feet, standing upright, though still shaky and unsure. The body, though fragile, seemed to gather strength with every second it remained upright. The mother, without hesitation, stayed close, her trunk sweeping over her baby in a gesture of quiet affection, reinforcing her presence and care. The calf swayed slightly, unsure of its footing, but it was no longer alone in its struggle. The mother's form loomed large and protective, offering the only stability the calf needed. The man, watching this quiet exchange, exhaled softly, feeling a shift in the air. There was no longer any fear in the baby's eyes. The panic had faded, replaced by the gentle comfort of the mother's presence. The calf, though still fragile and uncertain, now knew it was not in danger. It had found its feet, and with them it had found a new strength. The man felt a quiet pride stir within him. This was the raw beauty of nature, the simple, unspoken bond between mother and child that transcended any human intervention. No effort, no treatment could replace the healing power of a mother's care. It was a bond that could not be broken, a connection forged in silence and strength. As the baby stood, wobbling but determined, the mother remained at its side, guiding it with soft nudges, her trunk moving in slow, deliberate motions. The calf, now slowly finding its confidence, began to take tentative steps, each movement more assured than the last. The man stood still, watching the scene before him with a sense of reverence. The elephants, once torn apart by trauma, were now reunited, and in this simple act of care, the man knew that the bond between them was stronger than anything he could offer. This was nature, pure and untainted, unfolding in its most quiet, powerful form. The air around them seemed to hum with an unseen energy, as if the very earth itself responded to the shifting moment. The mother elephant, her large frame steady and poised, lifted her head high. Her ears flapped slowly, each movement deliberate as she inhaled deeply. The stillness of the savannah seemed to draw in around her, as if waiting for what was to come. Then, with a power that vibrated through the air, she called out, a deep, resonant trumpet that echoed across the plains. It was a sound that carried not just the mother's call for her calf, but also a summons to the herd. The call was ancient, woven into the fabric of life itself. It reverberated through the grasslands, traveling over the land, reaching out into the distance. The man, standing quietly at the edge of the scene, felt the weight of the moment, watching as the baby elephant, still fragile but growing stronger with each breath, took a few hesitant steps forward. Its body wobbled slightly, the weight of its legs still unfamiliar, but there was something in the baby's eyes, a spark of determination, of resilience. It stayed close to its mother, the small form seeking comfort and strength in the rhythm of her movements. The calf's legs, though unsteady, began to find their footing. It was a fragile thing, but in that quiet, careful step, there was hope. Minutes passed in silence, save for the soft rustling of the grass in the breeze. Then, far in the distance, the soft, familiar sound of distant trumpeting reached the man's ears. It was a deep, low echo, a call that resonated with the same timbre as the mother's, but more distant still. The mother's ears flicked in response, her head turning slightly, listening intently. The baby elephant, sensing the change, lifted its head as well. The air around them shifted once more, a silent understanding passing between the mother and the calf. The herd was coming. From the tall grasses, the first shapes began to emerge, large, dark silhouettes against the golden expanse. Slowly, deliberately, the elephants appeared one by one. First, the matriarch, her movements slow but sure, followed by several others, each elephant moving with purpose, their heavy steps creating a soft tremor in the earth. Their forms were massive and strong, yet each one carried a calm presence as they moved towards the mother and her calf. The baby elephant's small body stiffened for a moment, its legs frozen as it watched the approaching figures. There was a brief flicker of uncertainty in its eyes, unsure of these newcomers, of what their arrival meant. But the mother, ever watchful, remained close by. Her trunk moved gently towards the calf, offering soft reassurance. The baby, slowly but surely, began to relax, its legs trembling but standing tall. As the herd circled around them, the larger elephants formed a protective barrier, standing close, their massive bodies creating a shield for the mother and her calf. The baby elephant stood still, now flanked by the strength of its kin, and for the first time there was a visible shift in its posture. Its legs seemed to grow steadier, more assured with every passing moment. The small form was no longer fragile, but part of the rhythm, part of the pulse of the herd. The man, his heart full but his presence no longer needed, stepped back slowly. He had been a witness to the moment, but now it was clear this was nature's work, not his. The wild had called, and the herd had answered. There was no need to intrude. The elephants moved with quiet purpose, their protective circle around the calf growing tighter. The mother, now surrounded by her family, stood tall and proud, her eyes calm, knowing that her calf was no longer alone. The man watched quietly, standing at the edge of the herd's movement, feeling the peace of the moment wash over him. Nature had taken its course. The baby elephant, once so fragile and uncertain, was now standing tall among its kin, no longer just a small creature in need of protection, but part of a legacy, part of the wild. The call of the herd had returned, and the wild had embraced them all once again. With a final glance, the man turned and stepped quietly away, leaving the elephants to continue their journey, knowing that this moment, this return to the herd, would remain with him forever. The herd moved with purpose, their steps slow but steady, each one deliberate as they began their journey away from the clearing. The baby elephant, now stronger and more confident, walked beside its mother, its small, wobbly legs taking more assured steps. Its trunk, still unsteady, reached out to touch the ground as it followed its mother's lead, learning the rhythm of the world around it. The connection between them was palpable, a quiet bond forged by the wild's unspoken language. The baby no longer seemed lost in the vastness of the savannah, for now it was with its family, surrounded by the safety of the herd. The man remained at the edge of the clearing, his presence unnoticed by the elephants, but his eyes never left them. There was no hurry in their departure, no sense of urgency. It was a quiet, unspoken farewell, a moment of gentle movement toward the horizon. The herd walked as one, their steps a rhythmic pulse that echoed through the land. The man watched, his heart full, knowing that the baby elephant was no longer in danger, that it was safe in the care of the one who had always been there to guide it. It was a soft, almost sacred moment, a transition from vulnerability to strength, from uncertainty to belonging. The sun hung low in the sky, its golden light casting long, stretching shadows over the earth. For a brief moment, everything seemed to pause, as if the savannah itself was holding its breath. The man could hear the wind rustling through the grass, the distant calls of birds, and the steady movement of the herd as they made their way across the open plains. It was a sound that carried the weight of life itself, of resilience and survival, of the simple truth that the wild, in all its raw beauty, had found its balance once more. The man did not feel the need to intervene, to walk closer. The baby elephant was where it belonged now, surrounded by the protection of its mother and the watchful eyes of the herd. It was no longer a lost creature, but part of something much larger, something ancient and enduring. The man took a deep breath, his chest filling with a quiet gratitude, as if he could feel the strength of the wild coursing through him. He had been a part of this, a fleeting moment in the life of the herd, and that was enough. The herd continued to move forward, the baby elephant now walking with more confidence, its small steps falling in time with those of its kin. The man watched as they grew smaller in the distance, the figures of the elephants slowly fading into the horizon. Their silhouettes merged with the landscape, becoming one with the vast, endless savanna. The man remained standing, his heart full of a quiet peace, knowing that for now the wild had reclaimed what it had lost. The baby elephant was no longer lost, it was home, and the cycle of life continued, just as it had for countless generations before. As the last light of the day slipped away, the man turned to leave, the memory of the moment softly etched into his heart. The world around him was bathed in the fading light of the setting sun, a gentle reminder of the quiet strength that surrounded him. The distant movement of the herd, now a mere shadow on the horizon, was the last echo of the day, a reminder that the wild had once again found its balance. And the man, with a heart full of quiet gratitude, walked away, carrying the weight of this small miracle with him, knowing that the baby elephant was no longer lost, but finally home.